We didn't have the right equipment, we didn't have the right weapons, but we did what we had to do with what we had at the time.
In 2017, we interviewed retired Major General Donald W. Shepperd, a decorated combat pilot who flew 247 fighter missions during the Vietnam War.
We thought we were doing the right thing to protect our country, and so we went to war with our buddies, and we flew together, and we did what we thought was right.
Donald was 26 years old when he first went to Vietnam.
You got to understand the context of the Vietnam War. First of all, we had just come out of World War II. We beat the Germans and Japanese. We were all powerful, if you will. And then we had this communist threat from the Chinese and from the Russians, which we thought were monolithic. Allied with North Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh and the North Vietnamese were basically trying to take over this poor democratic government in South Vietnam. That was the view of the Americans as we entered the war. The Maddox incident took place where Vietnamese torpedo boats supposedly attacked the destroyer Maddox. And we thought, well, I tell you what, we'll deploy some Air Force squadrons over there. We'll lob in a few bombs, it'll be over.
What was meant to be a quick show of force turned into something far bigger. The bombs kept falling, and the war kept growing.
We began to attack North Vietnam because it wasn't just South Vietnam that was involved in supporting the South Vietnamese. We also had to attack the North Vietnamese because supplies were coming in the port of Hai Phong, and of course the capital up in Hanoi and what have you. So we began to attack targets up in the north. Now, that's when basically the idea behind Misty took place. We were flying close air support missions in the south with the F-100 to support the South Vietnamese and the U.S. forces that had now been deployed into Vietnam.
As the war escalated, U.S. forces faced a new challenge. Vital supply routes were slipping through the cracks.
Now we basically needed some help up north. And what was happening was, with bombing restrictions, we couldn't attack things that we needed to attack, like the ports. So things were funneling down through the trails and through the highways in North Vietnam, through Route Pac 1, which is the southern portion of North Vietnam, into the south to supply the Viet Cong, if you will, and later the North Vietnamese soldiers. And also then routes opened up into Laos.
Supplies flowed south, fueling the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army. Stopping them became a top priority.
So basically what we needed to do was needed to attack those things that were coming down, the supplies that were getting to the Viet Cong and later the North Vietnamese soldiers in South Vietnam.
North Vietnam, prop-driven Sky Raiders are in the van of the force from the carriers. They are to join with Air Force jets to hit munition dumps just 100 miles south of the red capital of Hanoi.
So we deployed propeller-driven forward air control airplanes, O-1s, Cessna Bird Dogs, O-2s, Cessna Skymasters, to basically try to find this stuff, mark it for bomb-laden fighters.
But the North responded with deadly force.
The North Vietnamese, while this was happening, were deploying more and more defenses down into the south, more and more anti-aircraft guns, and even surface-to-air missiles. So basically, the propeller-driven aircraft were getting shot out of the sky. They couldn't survive.
As defences intensified, propeller aircraft were no longer viable. The US needed something faster, something tougher.
The propeller-driven aircraft could not survive because of the AAA environment that was being deployed down south. They were just getting shot out of the sky. And so they needed a jet aircraft that was faster and that could survive. They picked the F-100 because that was the most available. It was a two-seat airplane. We had two-seat F-100s that we used. We could put rockets outboard on them. We could have a lot of endurance because we could refuel between missions. We could find the targets and then we could roll in and mark them for bomb-laden fighters.
Down south, the F-100 got the job done. Up north, it was a whole new fight.
Now the F-4s and the F-105s were being used up north as well as down south because they had heavier bomb loads and could also deal with the MiG threats up there more. So the F-100 became the logical source to use in the southern part of North Vietnam and in Laos.
These flights would become known as Misty missions. Classified, covert, and extremely dangerous.
Looking back, it seems a little bit stupid to say, why was it so secret? Because what we were doing is flying over them, locating targets, rolling in with smoke rockets, marking the targets, and then fighters would bomb. It wouldn't take you very long on the ground to figure out what that was. But we didn't want people to know what we're doing, because the more they knew what we were doing, the easier they could defend. So we kept it very, very secret. It was labeled top secret at the time. We did some other things that were top secret. Some of them are probably still classified, having to do with locating targets on the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos and that type of thing.
To carry out these long, low and lethal flights, the F-100 proved essential.
We had a survivable airplane that could maintain energy, that could fly at about 400 knots, that could jink and still maintain energy, that was refuelable, so we flew 4 to 6 hour missions all the time. So it was an ideal aircraft that had good visibility, 2 pilots, one in the front that flew and the one in the back that handled the cameras and the maps, if you will, and then also directed the fighters, made contact with the fighters. So it was a very, very good airplane for the mission. It was capable, and it was also the right airplane because of availability, because others were needed elsewhere.
The F-100 wasn't the most advanced jet, but it was available, versatile and tough.
The F-100 was 2-seat. You needed 2 pilots, one to fly the airplane, one to work the radios and the maps in the back and handle a handheld camera. And again, it was the one that was available because the more capable airplanes that carried bigger bomb loads were needed up in North Vietnam, in Route Peg 5 and 6 around Hanoi and Haiphong, where there were tremendously dense anti-aircraft defenses up there and also SA-2 missiles. They were needed up north, especially because they carried heavier bomb loads. The F-100 basically had 4 stations they could carry, plus 2 drop tank stations. And so the F-100 was good because it could refuel between missions for visual recce and could carry the rockets. It didn't have to carry the big bomb loads because they were being carried by the fighters. So we found the targets, marked the targets with the F-100, and then fighters such as F-4s and F-105s would come in and bomb the targets that we marked with our smoke rockets.
Their mission was clear: to stop the flow of weapons and troops heading south through the jungle trails and hidden roads of Vietnam.
Our mission was to stop the flow of men and materials headed south. We were after truck convoys, we were after ammunition, we were after soldiers, we were after anything that was moving south to attack our American troops and South Vietnamese troops in South Vietnam. It was an impossible mission. And we could operate only in daylight at the time. We didn't have precision weapons at the time, so even though we could find targets and mark them, it was very hard to hit targets because the targets were heavily camouflaged and also dispersed. So it was very difficult, even though we marked the targets, for the fighters dropping bombs to really hit the targets, if you will. So it was a very, very difficult, even impossible mission in retrospect.
Spotting enemy convoys through dense jungle was nearly impossible, but Misty pilots learned to see what others couldn't.
First of all, jungles are thick. Camouflage is very effective, and distance from the target is your enemy. In other words, as you're flying, the higher you fly, the less you can see, the less you can really identify. But we became expert as Misties. It was really hard to hide anything from us. Number one clue was you see a bunch of guns down there, a bunch of gun sights, 37, 57 millimeter gun sight. Aha, they're here to protect something. Now, one of them was obvious, like you'd have a bridge crossing or something of that sort. But when you saw them out in the middle of nowhere, you'd say, hey, these guys are here to protect something. So you would start looking for what they were there to protect, flying low. And we became experts at locating camouflage targets, things that stood out, different colors, different shapes and what have you. In other words, it didn't fit in with the jungle. It was a square shape down there. There was something there. We didn't know exactly what it was necessarily, but we could find things of interest and then we could mark it for the bomb-laden fighters. It became really difficult for anybody to hide things from us after we became experienced, what we call misty eyes, being able to find stuff through the jungle down there.
What bonded Misty pilots together wasn't just the danger, it was the loyalty.
I am proud to be a Misty pilot because I flew with a group of extremely capable, extremely motivated, extremely brave, heroic people. I was a part of that. We did anything to look after each other. And if somebody went down, we pulled out all in stops to save them. We would do anything to save a guy that went down. It didn't matter whether he was a Misty or another American pilot or a Vietnamese pilot. We would do anything that we could.
Despite the chaos of war, Misties held themselves to a strict moral code.
Basically, the whole time I was a Misty, you hear about people bombing villages and burning villages and stuff like that. Nobody from Misty that I knew ever attacked anything that was intentional. We did not attack villages. We went after targets that we thought were military targets and needed to be destroyed. I never did anything that I was ashamed of. I basically tried to stop and kill things that were coming south to kill our soldiers. That was what our mission was about. That's what I did, and that's what I'm proud of.
The Misty pilots paid a high price, but the F-100 proved its worth in a mission unlike any other.
The F-100 was certainly a successful combat airplane, no question about it. But the Misty mission was a very, very difficult mission. We flew at low altitude for long periods of time, exposed to gunfire the whole time we were flying, and we lost a lot of airplanes. 28% of our pilots were shot down, some of them twice. It was extremely difficult, very high loss rates, and we did not accomplish our mission. The reason was we couldn't hit what we were after from the standpoint of dropping because we didn't have precision weapons. We couldn't fly at night, we couldn't locate things at night and attack at night like they can today.
For Donald, it was an impossible mission, flown with limited tools against overwhelming odds. But they did what they could with what they had.
They can do it today in all kinds of weather, from high altitude standoff, not getting down in the AAA environment. So it was an impossible mission. We're still proud we did it. We did it with what we had. We didn't have the right equipment. We didn't have the right weapons. But we did what we had to do with what we had at the time. We thought we were doing the right thing to protect our country from the teeming hordes of communism that we thought were monolithic and were sweeping the Southeast Asia. And so we went to war with our buddies, and we flew together, and we did what we thought was right.
Over his 30-year career, Major General Donald Shepperd commanded over 110,000 Air National Guard personnel, 1,400 aircraft, 88 flying units, and 250 support units, spread throughout the 54 states and territories. He served as head of the Air National Guard at the Pentagon before retiring in 1998. We hope you enjoyed this video on veteran Major General Donald Shepperd and his experiences within the Vietnam War. If you would like to see more content on Army veterans like this, then please subscribe, like the video, and drop a comment down below. Make sure to turn on notifications to be the first to watch our next video. Thank you for watching. See you next time.